Hello, everyone. We're going to start in a couple of minutes. Just waiting for everyone to join. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. And this is our first webinar, and hopefully everything works as expected. And if you see any problems or have any questions, you just send a message in the chat, and I will see that. Okay, let's get going. So I posted a link. Can you hear me? Can someone confirm that?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Okay, so I posted a link to chat. You can open it. You can register using any email, or you can just log on if you already created an account there. You don't have to do that, but it will help if you want to see the same thing on your own screen, especially if you have like two screens. So just a few words about how it's going to work, like webinars, the whole thing. We will try to cover topics that are suitable for beginners and for intermediate users as well, which means we usually start with something that is simple and progress towards more complicated stuff. And we will also cover phprunner and phprunner.net. So the most material will be the same for both programs, but if they have like a server code, server-side code, PHP or C#, we will cover both. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So I hope everyone is in there, and this is the dev quest. The purpose of this quest is to get you familiar with using Chrome developer tools, because this is the first thing that you use when something doesn't work as expected in your application. So first question, have you got any sources? Obviously, we are talking about view source functionality. You right-click anywhere on the page, choose view page source. If you don't use Chrome, the same functionality is available in both Firefox and Edge, so that's the same thing basically. View page source. In the very first line, you can see a comment. The answer is hello there. We can just copy it, paste the answer, and click submit. So we can go to the next step. So when it's makes sense to use the source of your app, sometimes you can add debug information, like you output something and you forget about it, and it will you won't be able sometimes to see it on the page, but in the source you can see, and sometimes it will break your application. So it is just useful to view the source of your app. Anyway, continue to the next step. cancellation. It's a pun. We're talking about the console here, JavaScript console, where you can see all the error and everything is what is happening in your app. So you can press F12 button on your keyboard, or you can go to the menu, and under more tools, you can choose developer tools. If you have multiple screens, it usually helps when you move your console to a different screen, or you can also choose to dock it and see everything on the same screen. It's up to you. I have multiple monitors, but for the purpose of this video, I will keep it on the same screen. So if we can take a look at the console here, you see there is something that says step 2 solitude. What is this? You can click on the JavaScript file that produces this output. And you can see that there is an event that happens on the add page. It reads the URL of the page. Okay. And if page parameter equals step 2, it outputs to the console the following message. Step 2, password solitude. So you can also copy and paste it. And when it is useful, so when you write lots of JavaScript code, sometimes it doesn't work as expected, and you want to, you want to make sure that certain area of the code is executed, for instance, and you can output some messages this way. You can output variables, values, etc. So, like, it helps you to find out what works and what doesn't, and where exactly is the problem. So it's like a basic troubleshooting. So in any JavaScript code, you can use console log and send some messages or some variables. Okay, now we copy solitude, paste it to the answer, and click submit. The answer is correct, and we go into the next step. So far, so good. It's easy. Like first few questions supposed to be like really, really easy. This is something that is slightly more complicated, but we need to find out like some broken CSS. So how it works in general? You right click anywhere on the screen, like maybe you can select your something. Select that question, right click on it and click inspect. And it opens your developers tools consoles again. Here you can see what is selected. If you mouse over certain elements, it will highlight them on the page as well. Okay, let me do this so you can see it. So this is the span, this is the H2 tag, and on the right side, you can see CSS of this element. You can see CSS, you can see where it's coming from which style file, and as you can see, there is something that is crossed. That's because if we mouse over unknown property name, that's because we use property named step 3, which does not exist. And that was the purpose of this exercise. So you can expect CSS of any element on the page, and you can see what's in there. So how is it useful? you all know that you can use custom CSS in phprunner and phprunner.net, right? And if you want to quickly test some CSS, you can do it using developer tools. For instance, right? Our H2 element is selected right now. So if I click here and add a new element, add a new CSS property, for instance, we want to make change the font size. I start typing font size. It comes with auto suggest. Font size, okay, 24 pixels. And it shows you immediately how it's going to look if you set a certain CSS property. Let's try 36. Okay, that's too big. Okay, try 32. Okay, not bad. Right? It looks better, maybe. Let me show you just a few more things that you can do here. You can change the color, for instance, right? Color, I don't know, purple. Why not? What else? You can choose a different font face. Font family, I guess. Yeah, font family. Cursive. Yeah, looks terrible, but some people may like it. And this is how you use CSS Inspector. You can find what is wrong, and you can experiment with CSS. And once you're done, you can just select it all, click Control-C, and copy it to phprunner or phprunner.net. So that's the idea. Anyway, right now we just select shell, which is our answer, paste it here, click submit, and we are, that's correct. We're going to the next step. Okay. Red, green, blue, RGB. This is how in web application you specify the color of any element. So we need to figure out what's the exact RGB value of this square. So we right click on it, click inspect, and we can see that this is an image, right? It would have been easier if it was like a regular HTML element, but it is an image, and we cannot just figure out what the color is. But luckily, there is a color picker that comes with Chrome developer tools. You just need to choose any color property anywhere where you see it, right? You click on it, it shows you color picker dialog. You click on this, mouse it over, and click anywhere on this image. Oops, it doesn't work as expected. It should be, okay, that's something with my, because I rebooted my computer and then changed the color setting, so this display. Okay, sorry about this. Let me do the same thing on a different screen. And okay, this is it. This is it. So you can see that it shows you a hexadecimal value of this color, which is 00 cafe. There are like a few words that can build from hexadecimal characters, and cafe will be our answer. We copy it as usual and paste it here, cafe, and submit. Continue to the next step. Okay, now it's going to be a little more complicated, but also at the same time a little more useful. So we have a button here. As most of you know, that buttons use via Ajax, a technology that can send something to the server and get an answer without reloading the page. It's very useful. You don't want to reload the page because it's a bad user experience. So how do you see what is being sent to the server, what server answers and everything? We also open developer tools, click F12, here it is, and you go to the network tab. First of all, you don't want to see all the files that are already loaded. You click clear button and it's empty. Now, go back to your web browser and click me button begs to be clicked on. That's what we do. Go back to developer tools. And when you see a new entry here named button handler, in PHP, it's button handlers.php. In phprunner.net, it will be just button handler with no extension. We click on it and we see things like headers, payload, and everything. So the first thing we need to check is the response. This is what our server sent us, and it says step 5, furious. So this is our hint. But before we proceed further, let me show you how it works, right? Where this furious is coming from. First of all, this is a JSON format. So we send data to server and from the server in JSON format. This is like XML, but it's much easier to use. And when we're talking about sending data to and from JavaScript, it usually be in JSON format. So here's my phprunner project that I used to build this application. And we go to event screen, click me button, and on the server side, this is a standard code that allows you to send something from the server side code to client after event. This is it, very simple. And it appears here and in our JavaScript client after code, we can use something like this if we needed to do something with it. There will be like variable named result and the result of step 5 would have the value of curious. We don't need to do anything with it right now. I'm just like explaining how things work. And the response is where we see what's coming from the server. So now we just copy curious, go back to our browser, and paste it here. So submit, our answer is correct. And continue to the next step. So does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Let's go, let's keep going. Okay, this is something similar, but a little more complicated. I will give you a little hint. So here we are going to figure out what is being sent from client before event to server event. Okay. We are going to delete everything on the network tab again. Clear. And we click me to button. Okay, go back to developers console and we go to response step and we see there is no response, which makes sense. If you go back to phprunner, we will see that we do not send anything. Okay, what is this? Click me to button. On the server side, we don't do anything. And this is why we don't see anything there in the response. So, but we already know, so we need to click other tabs. Headers is just a bunch of technical information. Payload, this is what we're looking for. Payload is what we send. It's a form data, and this is what we send from client before event to server event. And mostly it is technical information like button ID, so we know which button was clicked and what table it belongs to, is the master table and everything. But this is a custom parameter named step 6 with value of octopus. Let me show how it's been done in phprunner itself. So this is a click me to button, and in client before, we have this code. It will be exactly the same code in phprunner.net. Client before event, this is how we pass parameters from client before event to server event. It's all standard stuff. It's all in the manual. I will show you a link to the manual, and it's called passing data between events. So the button is uses what we call a 3-part event model. There is a client before event, there is server event, and there is client after event. And we can pass data from client before event to server, do something on the server side, like perform some database queries, and we can send data back to client after event. All standard stuff, nothing special, and you probably done this many, many times. So now we just copy the value of octopus and paste it here. Submit. Our answer is correct, and we proceed to the next step. Okay, this is something that is, again, is slightly more complicated, but again, slightly more useful. So there is, we're talking about some sort of error, right? Let's see what we got here. Just in case we clear everything on the network tab and console tab. So it's empty. Click the button and open the console again. And we can see the error. There's some sort of error here. Luckily, it shows us where exactly that error happens. So we click this source file on the right side, and it shows us the source code of this button. There is a bunch of additional code that phprunner adds, and the actual code that your code that you add to phprunner or phprunner.net is just these 2 lines. Oh, by the way, if you compress, use the option to compress JavaScript code, your code here might be scrambled and you won't see much. You won't understand much, right? There is a extremely useful pretty print button. If you click it, it will reformat your code, and if it was compressed, it will show you the original source code. It's extremely useful. And this is our code. You can see that error happens here. It says groundhog is not defined. That is correct, because we don't have a variable named groundhog, and since this is the text value, it is supposed to be wrapped by single or double quotes. Let me show you the code where it comes from. So it's a button named, you know what to do. By the way, if you are interested, we can add this project to download area. So you can download the project and play with it if you're interested to learn more about it. Okay, that's our code. Groundhog is not a variable. If it was a variable, it's probably the code probably run as expected, but it's not a variable. It was supposed to be text, but someone supposedly forgot to add double quotes around it. If we click check syntax, it compiles. By the way, it compiles. Why does it work? It's like it. The thing is that syntax checker doesn't know if groundhog is a variable or is it an error. It's the thing is this code on its own may not work, but after you add it to the main project, it will work if groundhog variable was defined somewhere else. So the syntax checker is only able to check the syntax, but it doesn't know if we have such a variable or not. Which means sometimes syntax checker is not that useful, and you need to compile your project and you need to run it in the actual web browser to see if it works or if it doesn't work. Anyway, so we can try and copy groundhog as our answer. And I'm doing this on purpose. And it doesn't work. Why? We need to go back and take a closer look at the code. Okay, yeah, okay, I will add the project to download area after we're done with it. Yeah, we also have it for phprunner, but we can convert it to Esperanto.net as well. Okay, let's go back to the console, right? And we see there is one more line of code that adds something else to groundhog. So it was supposed to say groundhog day with the space, right? So we can go back here, right? That makes sense. Okay, let me show you again. So it was supposed to be like two parts of the code, and it says groundhog, and then in the second line of the code we add space and day to it. So it's groundhog day, which is also movie name. So type in groundhog day. I'll post it in the chat. And submit. Okay, perfect, perfect. So every time you do something and you don't see any errors on the page, but something doesn't work, some button doesn't work, some other functionality doesn't work. First thing you check, you go to developer tools, open the JavaScript console and see if there are any errors here. It's extremely useful technique, and anything goes wrong, you go there first. That's the first thing you do. Like if anything doesn't work as expected. Because when we have like a server-side error, like PHP error or C# error, you usually see some sort of an error on the page. And with JavaScript errors, you don't see it. So you click F12 button, open developer's console, go there and see your error. And that's your first step. So go to the next step. So this is the last step. This is something that is very complicated and you don't need to master it. But so SQL injection is also like a very common, this is probably #1 threat if your web application, #1 vulnerability. And if you just use the built-in functionality of phprunner or Esperanto.net, you don't need to worry about it because it's already been taken care of. But if you add your code, you need to make sure that any input that comes from the user, you cannot trust it. It can be some malicious code there that if you add it to your SQL query as is, it may edit or delete some data. It may retrieve data that this user is not supposed to see, etc. I will show you exactly how it works, and I will also show you the code that is the bad code and what is the proper way to avoid this vulnerability. So this is something that is extremely common. Okay, let's get started. This one is going to take us probably a while. Let me show you, first of all, let me show you the, okay, it suggests that we enter war here. We do that, we submit it, and it shows our SQL query. So what's shown in bold, this is what we enter here. And this is the query. So select everything from books where owner is Mike and the book name is like war. This syntax means we're looking for a substring that named war. So it can be in the beginning of the string, anywhere in the middle of the string, at the end of the string, like just anywhere. This is just a common SQL syntax. The book name like war. So how do we proceed from here? The typical idea of SQL injection is that the string that you enter needs to start with a single quote. Let's just try this. Type in single quote and click submit. Take a look at our code now. So book name, like single quote, %, single quote, which is the correct SQL string. But we also have another % and another single quote in here, which means that SQL quote is not correct and will not run. So we need to make it correct somehow. Let's start like baby steps, right? Let's add a space after the single quote. Click submit. It looks a little better, but the code will not run anyway because we still have something that is added in the code and we need to work our way around it. So let's, I mean, all of you are familiar with SQL a little bit, right? And let's figure out like what we want from our query, right? There is part that we cannot change, right? So there always will be something about Mike, which is what we're looking for. We need to find what books Pete owns. So ideally, we need to select all the data from this table books, right? So how SQL works? We can use and. We already have it. Owner equals Mike and book name like basically the same that any book name. So show us all the books. That's a typo. Yeah. Show us all the books where owner is Mike and book name any book name, which is great, but that's not enough. What we need to do, we need to use an additional OR here. So show us all books that Mike owns, or just show us any book. So we do not specify owner here. We just ideally, we just say something like this, or book name like any book, right? This is our ideal where clause. And this is what we need to try to build. Chromebooks, right? Where owner is Mike and book name, any book name, or just any book name. I hope it makes sense, and we're getting a little bit closer to this. Did you guys try? I mean, I know that some of you already went through this quest and finished it, so you figured this out already. It was like a few months ago, and right now what we need to do, we need to figure out how to build a SQL query like this. Okay, let's start adding stuff. So what we have right now, we already have the first part, right? We already have this, and we have the part that is at the end. So what we miss is this part, or book name, like something like this, right? Okay, let's start adding this stuff a little bit, little by little, okay? Or book name, we can already submit it and see what happens. You see, it starts shaping up, right? Or book name, like, we can click submit again, and it will show us where exactly we are. Or book name, like, you see, we're almost there, right? We're almost there. We looks like we just missing a single quote, all right? Okay, there is suggestion from someone else. Yep, yeah, William, yeah, that's correct. You can do that. You can do that. You can do that as well. There are many ways to do this. So we just need to build a where clause that will return true every time. Yeah, exactly. I will try your suggestion as well. Okay, so right now we just need to add one single quote at the end, like this, submit, and boom, it shows us all the data from books table. So you can see that the developer tried to only restrict this to Mike's books only, but because of the bad code, someone who is tricky and smart will be able to retrieve the whole thing. Okay, let me try what William suggested. There can be another different option. Submit. Boom, the same thing, except it didn't return us the books that Pete owns, right? So it's similar, but we just need to one. Okay, let me see one. So we still need to do something about this one. Anyway, we will return back to the original. I mean, there is definitely more than one option. Yeah, there is more than one option. Okay, or again, book name, like, I believe that's what we're looking for. That's correct. So Moby Dick, I'm pretty sure most of you read it. I didn't, and I started it but didn't finish it. So anyway, add the answer. And okay, there is no next step. Continue to the next step, continue to the next step, but there is no next step, but you can click it and it says, okay, you completed the quest, because it's a dev quest. Okay, let me show you the bad code and what is more important and how to fix it, right? This is something that is very, very important. So that was what that was a regular submit button. Yeah, lots of code here, but that's not really a problem. Let me show you the code that doesn't work. Okay, that So what we do here in a client before event, we read what is entered into answer field, and we send it to the server, right? This is the code. That will be the same, exactly the same code for phprunner and ASP.NET because it's JavaScript. So we just send it as a parameter named answer. Now, go to the server code, and this is our code where we use. Okay, let me copy and paste it to Notepad. This is the code that you should not be using in your web application ever. So what's the problem here? The problem is if someone enters the malicious code that starts with a single quote, and of course, like in a real web application, nobody will print the actual SQL query for you. But sometimes it will print the error message, and if you have enough time, you can figure out the table name, the field name, you can figure out the data structure, and this is what you can do. Or sometimes you don't even need to do that. You can do something like, you can just finish the first query and run the second query. So you can do something like this, which is probably not, I mean, I tried it and it didn't work here because I created a special user for this dev quest, that user that only have permissions to execute SQL queries that select queries. So that user didn't have any access to delete or update or insert operation. But if we're talking about what you can put into a SQL query, you can start with a single quote again. And for MySQL, this is the way how you separate SQL queries. And that would be something like this: delete from books, right? You need to, I mean, that is not enough because like where book name, like this. Let me show you what SQL query it creates. Let's go back to our web browser. And just an example. Oh, you cannot do this. You cannot do this. I need to go and delete something in database to show you the idea. But anyway, you can see that what we do here, we finish the first SQL query and a semicolon, and then in our second query, we will try to delete everything from books table, which is the bad idea. Or you can select everything from users table, all usernames and passwords, or you can do whatever you want to do. So the code is that accept some input from the end user and use it as is in SQL query. That's just a bad idea, right? And the proper way to do this, we have a bunch of functions in our database API that can help you with this. So let me show you. Let me show you this page. So I'm going to search for phprunner database API. And the function we're looking for is called prepare SQL. Okay, here it is. That's the same thing in ASP.NET, just a slightly different syntax. So we're looking for, example number 3. So if you need to use something in your SQL query that comes from the end user, you don't want to just concatenate it with the rest of your SQL query. you need to use parameters, so it will be properly escaped. You see here, like you can use parameters like SQL variables, or you can use parameters that of your own. Let me copy it, and I'll show you how we can adjust our code so it runs as expected, right? It doesn't produce any errors. Okay, let's go back to Notepad. So this is the correct idea. This is the bad idea. So instead of this, we just type this. And that will be our second parameter. And like this. Prepare SQL. So that would have been the correct code. The owner is Mike and book name is like parameter 1, which is params answer. Let me show you the same code for phprunner.net. Okay. Just go back to the manual. Instead of phprunner, we go to phprunner.net. Basically the same code. Okay, we cut it as well. Go back to Notepad. Here. So the same kind of thing with one minor change. Yeah, that would be the code for phprunner.net. Same idea. So this is like every time you crafting your own SQL query, doesn't matter if it, I mean, it's mostly for select, but it doesn't really matter, but that uses something that comes from the user, or it comes from the URL, right? For instance, you passing data from one page to another in your application, like here, page equals step 9. So in your code, you can use a variable named, that's syntax for PHP, get page. That's in our example, we'll have the value of step 9, which is great. But if you try to use it as is in your SQL code, someone can do the same thing with this parameter. So be careful when you, in your SQL code, when you use anything that user is able to change, okay? Add slashes, yes, it does. So there is someone is asking, oh, if add slashes does the same thing. Yes, it does similar job. We just recommend to use database API because it may have a little more protection than just add slashes function. Let me show you what was the question. I mean, you can see the question, right? Add slashes does similar job, but we just recommend to use database API. It's just easier and makes more sense. That is all. And it's, you want, like, you probably want to use database API every time you interact with your database. Okay, this is pretty much everything that we have for today, and we still have time, so I will be glad to answer any questions. I have a couple of small announcements by saving it for the end, and if you have any questions that relate to any steps of this tutorial or something similar, feel free to ask, and I will answer this. Okay. Okay, I don't see any questions. Let me see if someone asked before that. Yeah, I think we're good. I mean, okay, I will make this project available definitely for phprunner and probably for phprunner.net as well, just in case. Okay, yeah, someone is going to ask a new question. Okay, let me just say a few words about what else is happening. Okay, so next week we probably will have a webinar at the same day, Friday, and the same time, 11 a.m. I know it's not very convenient for some of you. I know that Danny joined from China, which is probably around 11 p.m. But we're just trying to like find time that covers most of the time zones, like USA and Europe and parts of Asia. But if you have, eventually we have more participants, we may have 2 different webinars the same day covering different time zones, right? Just for now, yeah, someone is from Indonesia. Yeah, exactly. That should be very, very late right now. So thank you for joining. I appreciate that. Okay. phprunner experts. I suggest you post something to phprunner user group on Facebook so more people can see that, and we can mention it in our newsletter if so more people can see that. Like it's not like there is some phprunner expert that is sitting and waiting for someone to hire them. Like most people have other projects, but they may have free time and they can help you with your project as well. Okay, a few minor announcements. We will release a minor update, phprunner 10.91 next week. It mostly, there are like a few fixes and updates. First, the most important is login via Google. Google is changing the way how this functionality works, and it will stop working in, I don't know, like in a month or 2, in May, I guess. So we are rolling an update that will continue working with the new Google login. Also, we added a few tweaks to REST API, third-party REST API connections, and it's just going to be a little more useful to use it. It will be a slightly different UI and like a few quite different functions in there. Like you will be able to send data as a JSON or HTTP form, or just type in request body manually in phprunner or phprunner.net and send it. It's just like that is a feedback from our users, like a different REST APIs required to do different things. We just like adding more functionality there, so more REST APIs will be supported. That is all. And that will also be some changes to our own REST API. We will be able to accept data on edit pages in JSON format as well as HTTP format. As like also something useful that some REST API clients can only send data in a certain format, and with these changes, we will be able to work with those clients as well. So just a few minor changes here and there, but many people will find it useful. We also we're still working on version 11, and it will be probably another 3 months till it is ready. I mean, ready means that will be something that we can actually show you. That's quite a big redesign, and the working its good as expected, and it's a big change. So yeah, probably sometime in June we will be able to show you something. What else? I wanted to say something else. Okay, there is a little side project that we finished lately. It's maybe some of you heard about it. It's called 49 Forms. It allows you to build really quick forms and surveys. And you can customize them. So it's similar to Google Forms, for instance, with two pretty big differences. First of all, you can customize the visual appearance. You can choose images. You can choose how that for each question. And let me show you, that's a sample form that is here. Let me show you how it works. I click open it. This is the start page. You can also customize it as well. You click let's go. You can display any image and pick an answer, click continue. You see it's interactive. It has a little bit of animation. It's there is a study that people would be more happy to fill forms and surveys like this if they look better. That's all. That's nothing special about it. So click continue and so the corner. That's it. That's something very simple. You can create your form like in 5 minutes. It's very easy to create, very easy to modify, and it's good looking. And we have like a free plan, no credit card is required. So if you can take a look at this 49 forms and maybe try to create a few forms and send us your feedback, let us know what you think, or maybe you can even use it in real world. Because the beauty of this is that you don't need to create a database, you don't need to think about web hosting, you just can use it. In 5 minutes, you can send this form to your customers or your friends and get responses. That is all. I think this is it for today. I don't see any questions. And next webinar most likely will be about database speed optimization. If you log on to your members area, there is a suggestion box in there, and you can vote for suggestions that other people provided, and you can also add your own suggestion. And you can do that, devclub/members. Suggestion box. Your UI will look different. Yeah. So most likely the most voted for now is database speed optimization. This is what we will work on next Friday, I guess, unless there is something else that is more interesting comes up. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye. And end the meeting.